Giants. So I don't know what Dan knows. Maybe he knows more than us. Jordan Reed, by the way, putting out an updated mock draft today that includes this trade. The Giants have 3 picks in the top 40 now. Jordan has New York taking Sonny Styles at 5 and his Buckeye teammate Caleb Downs at 10. That would be an impressive haul from some great defensive players. Dan Orlovsky hopped into the virtual world to break down the Ohio State safety.
Okay, Dan. You good at it.
Caleb Downs won the Jim Thorpe Award as the nation's best defensive back last season, and he's a true Swiss Army knife. He can play 10 of the 11 defensive positions and lined up literally all over the field at Ohio State in the last 2 seasons, spending time at safety, both corner positions, off-ball linebacker, and yes, edge rusher. Downs has rare football instincts and can impact the game in multiple ways. He's one of 3 players with multiple interceptions and at least 60 tackles in each of the last 3 years. And he had 253 total tackles in his college career. Downs finds the football at a different pace, which makes him impossible to throw against. He didn't allow a single touchdown in 823 coverage snaps at Ohio State, adding 4 interceptions and 9 PBUs in the last 2 seasons. Downs can simply do it all on defense, and we'll hear his name early in round 1.
Tell him, Dan. By the way, you can't play all those positions and not be incredible.
That's one thing you're good at.
You have to be incredibly smart to be able to do what he does. I think the football intelligence is a key piece of him, too.
Well, we got
I wasn't talking about you.
I don't want to go that far.
Mina, does Caleb Downs make sense in New York to you?
Yeah, I mean, Caleb Downs makes sense most places, quite frankly. But when you look at the spine of this Giants defense, it's such a glaring need, both linebacker and safety. And the idea of potentially getting Styles and Downs to fill those needs would turn a real weakness on the roster into a strength if the draft were to somehow shake out that way for them. Both highly cerebral players. I mean, when you watch Downs, he's just constantly communicating on the field, both pre and post-snap. And it would address really what was the Giants' biggest problem last year, which was their abysmal run defense, 32nd league-wide in DVOA. When you watch Caleb and Styles, to me, they're the 2 best tacklers at their positions in the draft. So I would be pretty thrilled, especially, thinking about this team from a timeline perspective. That's your young core on defense, and you already have the really good edge rushers. They're one of the few teams, by the way, too, where you feel a little better about going at so-called lower value positions because they already have pass rushers, which, Marcus, very few teams in the NFL are set there, but the Giants might be one of them.
No doubt, MK. Nobody's going to bat an eye if this team takes Sonny Styles and Caleb Downs. They would be ecstatic, by the way. I just think if Love is anywhere in this conversation, that you would be hard-pressed not to think about it, knowing that you had a second pick where you could go a defensive guy. Maybe not one of those guys, but still get a really good, heavy defensive draft where somebody could come and impact that side of the ball. Jeremiah, to me, he's going to make a lot of people probably regret not taking him. I look at the impact that a Bijan Robinson has made, even though that team hasn't won a lot. But you think about a young quarterback in New York. John Harbaugh he wants to run the football at a high clip. He's had successful running backs in Baltimore his entire career, damn near. They've been one of the leading rushing teams. So I don't think you can just pass that pick with Love and say, well, we're not going to think about it because we need to build this defense in such a defensive-rich draft where you may be able to really get good players later on. I think Jeremiah Love name is going to fly around in that room.
He's not going to still be there at 10, so you'd have to take him at 5.
At
right?
5,
Correct.
yeah.
And we'll get into it as this week goes. I think Giants at 5 and 10. I wanted to hit on Downs a little bit. I think he plays a premium position in the NFL nowadays. About 2 or 3 years ago, our show started to talk about how football was kind of circling back to, running the football. And then the last year or two, it was a little bit more of offenses playing from underneath the center, multiple tight ends on the field. You and I grew up in the era where the nickel was as important a position as there was in football. And if I just look at the defenses that were really good last year.
They all had one.
Nicky Manwari in Seattle changed it. Cooper DeJean in Philly changed it. Derwin James in L.A. impacted it. Jalen Petrie in Houston changed it. McMillan in Denver. I just think he may not be your every down safety.
Yeah.
I think he's an every down nickel. And I just believe that is a premium position in the NFL.
You could go back to Tyrann Mathieu when he came to Kansas City.
100%.
You can go back.
Kyle Hamilton in Baltimore.
Agreed.
Yeah, because, Mina, some people say, well, this is too high to take a safety. But to Dan's point, the versatility there and how he would actually play, right, makes you say at 5 it's not at all too high.
I think it also has to do with the alternatives because, you know, if you don't take it, if there's a premium edge rusher, you take the edge rusher over the safety if you had a real need at corner because of the financial aspects, but that's just not the case, right, potentially for New York. The player he reminds me of, we're going to talk about this later in the week, is Brian Branch, actually.
Totally.
You know, who fell way too far for Detroit in terms of how I would use him, his potential as a blitzer as well, but the fact that you could have him closer to the box. He's so good against the run, but also has the ability to cover tight ends and backs. And I do think Branch's versatility, when you look at his snaps, it looks pretty similar to what Dan showed at the beginning of this when talking about Caleb Downs and how he was utilized at Ohio State.
And you got to deal with Dallas and Philly. So I get it.
And you got to deal with tight ends.
Yeah.
You got to deal with tight ends in every down.
Good numbers. By the way,
Commanders.
speaking of Cowboys, we haven't talked about them all show, but we're doing it next.
Good.
We had to make
That suit does look good. I'm going to steal it.
He said trade that we saw just a couple days ago, the Giants sending Dexter Lawrence to the Bengals, who were in desperate need for some help on the D-line, and they got back the 10th overall pick in return. They already had pick number 5 as well. So now they have really impactful picks in this first round. Adam, what are you hearing about Giants' plans for their 2 top 10 picks on Thursday night?
Well, Laura, new Giants head coach John Harbaugh is in uncharted territory. During his 18 years in Baltimore, he had 1 top 10 pick, and before he coaches his first game for the New York Giants, he'll have 2 top 10 picks. There are a lot of ways the Giants can go with these picks, and a lot will depend on how the first 4 picks Thursday night shake out. We don't know exactly whether there'll be 2 pass rushers that go before the Giants or one of them surprisingly will fall to them, which is certainly a possibility here if the Arizona Cardinals can't trade out at number 3 and if they go ahead and take Jeremiyah Love at that spot, which is in consideration. The Titans will come up next. If they opted against the pass rusher, which is certainly in play here, then one of those pass rushers could be there for the Giants. As it is, I think a lot of people feel like they could come away with one of these Ohio State defensive players, Sonny Styles or Caleb Downs. They also have an obvious admiration and respect for Jordan Tyson. They were at his pro workday on Friday, impressed with him, really seemed to like him. Again, a lot of ways the Giants can go, but they feel like they'll come out of this with 2 key players.
All right, keep an eye on that. The Jordan Tyson play is really interesting. A lot of people talk about his talent. I think Dan tweeted out as soon as the trade happened, Jordan Tyson, you are a Giant.